Good morning and welcome to Thoughts and Updates. Here I am. It's pouring a rain outside, and we're still in phase one of coming out of lockdown. So, as it stands at the moment, we are still a little bit of self isolating, a little bit of keeping apart. Um, Internationally, I don't know if people have seen this, but certainly nationally, there has been an incident in Glasgow with asylum seekers in a particular hotel in the city centre, which has led to the usual outcry of an outpouring of people being hopeful that asylum seekers will be stuck in a boat somewhere and it scuttled to send them all to a watery grave or just put in a plane and sent away. And because one of the people who was stabbed was the police officer who was one of them who was first on the scene, although 4 or 5 others were also stabbed, and the only person who died was the perpetrator, beautifully called the stabber by one of the people living there, who I presume is an asylum seeker. And there is that presumption, isn't it? Because he was ethnically diverse, that I have in the context of it and all the rest of it. And it's that, and it's the police response, which, in a certain context, particularly of where we are just now, that I don't find puzzling, but there is a puzzle. It took the police a couple of minutes to arrive at this incident. The centre of Glasgow was in lockdown. We also had pictures of 150 police officers there. In London and Notting Hill, there was an illegal party which ended up being a riot. Both of these incidents involved people who were black and minority ethnic. Huge numbers have flocked to, and we're talking thousands, flocked to Brighton Beach, have flocked to beaches on the south coast of England, have flocked to beaches on the west coast of Scotland. The police presence there has been light. The majority of people who are there aren't black and minority ethnic. Now, the amount of disorder that was in those 4 incidents could be separated into two. One was a stabbing incident, the other one, the Notting Hill, it was called a riot. I don't know if it was a riot before the police arrived or it was a riot after they had. However, it is worth, in a philosophical debate of how are we going to come out of this, to examine and to look very carefully at how our institutions, particularly the police, respond to any kind of call or cry for help, and how we prioritise those calls. Because what we do know is those who are black and minority ethnic in the United Kingdom, as indeed in the United States, are more likely to be stopped and searched, are more likely to be accused, are less likely to get a form of justice because of the lack of access at times that they have to legal representation or to the quality of legal representation that others have. So as we come out of that lockdown phase, as we start to rebuild our communities and our societies, it is perhaps time, as America is looking at defunding the police, that the United Kingdom look at how we tell our institutions that we want them to respond to a variety of different circumstances and situations, and particularly different circumstances. And my column this week, my blog for Fringe Review, is exactly that. The second cohort of the deaf acting degree are going in next year to their final year. The first cohort have done a fantastic job of blowing the trumpet for deaf artists throughout the whole of the United Kingdom, except the only people who have got their ears, their lugs open, are those in England. Fantastic news last week or the week before that B. Webster, one of those first cohort, has been commissioned by the National Theatre of Scotland to write a piece for Scenes for Survival, which will be signed, hopefully captioned so that I can read it. But then again, there's a privileged view that, deaf people have had to put up with, being unable to access a huge amount of entertainment, a massive amount of the arts, and yet me as a hearing privileged white person is sitting here going, I hope I'll be able to understand it. So, again, my question was, as we come out of this pandemic, what society are we going to build? And the arts are a massive part of how we've got through this. If it wasn't for Netflix, Prime Video, Amazon, the telly, Sky, Now TV, all of these things, if it wasn't for these things, what would we have now? We would have people who are struggling to get through in ways that is difficult to comprehend, because entertainment has been at the core, and yet we're seeing increasingly numbers of theatres who are reporting that they're having to make people redundant, arts organisations which are looking to never come out of this. The loss of all of this is going to be palpable, absolutely palpable, and I worry a great deal. I worry about where we are with statues. One of the things that I have seen a little bit of the kickback in terms of those who are not in favour of Black Lives Matter and those who are not in favour of the pulling down of the statues has been to identify a number of statues which have been raised not for those who were slave owners or wherever, but also for those people who have given us a different sense of who we are. There's a wonderful statue in a number of places in Bristol, for example, to an Indian scholar. Now, his name escapes me because I haven't got the information sitting in front of me, and I would need it because it was a name that was totally unfamiliar to me. And I feel a little concerned that it is forgotten to me, because it should be very prominently in my head as somebody who studied university history, particularly British history, or rather more English kind of history. We had a Scottish history department, so they took care of all that shenanigans. It was European and British history that I was studying. So why do I not know this guy? Why is it that in the history of our empire building and running of the empire that there are certain figures that we don't know? And it's quite obvious why, because we don't want people to know, because it doesn't fit the narrative that we want to tell. So when we change our Eurocentricness in terms of the teaching and the understanding of history, we should also look at how we are going to preserve the problems that we created, as well as celebrate the joy that we have brought to the world. But also, in amongst all of that, it is key to have that honesty, that breadth of honesty, so that yes, we do investigate how we dealt with the Indians, the colonies. Even the name of the colonies I struggle with as well. But yet it gives us an absolute clue as to how we viewed them. Our groups of islands and countries that served us, which is an appalling thought. So whilst I do believe that some of these statues should go, they should be, however, preserved and put somewhere so that they are a lasting monument to our shame. But where do we put them? What do we do with them? Where do they go when they're taken away? So, Fringe Review this week, I have done 3 reviews. One of Isolation, Kate Dickie, National Theatre of Scotland. One online in BBC iPlayer. I told my mum I was going on an RE trip, which is about terminations, abortions. Girl from Harare. Terrible, absolutely appalling story. Girl from Belfast. Yet again, another one that was quite kind of difficult. A Scouse kid, and also a Mancunian who was a Bengali Muslim, which made it a very diverse group. They did something very, very interesting. They had earpieces, so they were listening to what the originators, a verbatim piece of theatre. So it's true stories. So they were listening to the voices of the people who experienced it and then telling their story, which I thought as a technique was very, very interesting. Also, MILF, Wandsworth Arts Fringe have kept up some of the performances, and I find this quite fascinating. So you're able to catch them afterwards, and I'm quite sure there's only a few people who are doing it, but this was a monologue by Isadora Vibes, who is also the head of Dada for Girls, or one of the originators of Dada for Girls, looking at a feminist and a gender non-specific theatre company, and it was a really good piece. I thought there was a couple of things I wasn't sure about, but it really made me think. Really good. So on top of that, published this week is my Scottish Football Supporters Association piece of nonsense about Stuart Regan applying for a job at the American consulate and can a snake eat itself, which is about how the SPFL is currently battling its internal things out in a court, and Hearts and Partick Thistle are going to go to court on Wednesday, I think is the first hearing at the Court of Session. However, what I've written this week is a certain Mr. Lennon goes to Syria on a peacekeeping mission because he's been trying to do that in the SPFL. And also, I'll come back. I can't remember what I've written about that. Okay. Oh, yes, I do. Who's your love for an English club? Liverpool, after 30 years. Fantastic to see Liverpool achieve it. I was a Liverpool fan in the 80s because of Stevie Nicol, and then I became a Man U fan because of Sir Alex Ferguson, and I have a soft spot now for Tottenham Hotspur, and you can read why when it comes out next week. For Ringside Report for Brand, he gave me Frankie Randall. What a tremendous career and a very, very difficult end. He's currently in a nursing home, a care home in America, somewhere in the deep south, suffering from pugilistic dementia and Parkinson's. His last 16 fights, he only won 3 of them, lost 13. Fought Julio Chavez Jr. 3 times. Was the first man to beat him. And he won a world title. He won a world title on 3 occasions. But a sad end to his career. And pugilistic dementia is not to be sniffed at. It is specifically, obviously, due to the career, the job that he claimed always that he loved. And it was quite heartbreaking to read what his son was saying about him. Boxing is certainly making a big splash. There's not much to talk about. There was a World Super Flyweight title fight supposed to happen, never has. Bob Arum over in America is doing a Tuesday-Thursday card in the Bubble, beautifully called the Bubble, ironic, at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And they're getting some really decent contests, and some of the contests that are happening are shocks. People are being beaten. But the most bizarre one this week was Emmanuel Navarrete in Mexico City, who fought and won in a 6th round stoppage. But there was no commission present because the Mexican government has said there should be no sport. So one has to wonder what risks they are taking. And certainly right now, we should not be taking any risks. In Scotland, we are getting the virus under control, and that means that the next stage of where we are and we're in is about to occur. And once we get through phase 2, we get into phase 3, and that's when I can see some of our staff going out into our houses and working with our children and young people, which will be great to see again. But I'm going to be taking a holiday, and I'm going to get out the office, and I'm going to spend it, I think, in the living room. I don't know. It might be a step too far in the current circumstances, but we'll get some opportunity as well to get in my car, go down the road and see both Keris and Kieran, who I haven't seen for a while, and for whom these Easter eggs are still waiting. So, I don't think the sell-by date goes out in 2020. And even if it did, I've got a funny feeling they won't begin. So until the next time, it's bye for now.